My dear students, today we plan to discuss Robert Frost as a national American poet of 20th century, or we can say in other words some special features of his poetry or some important points of his poetry. As we know well that he is a poet of outdoor life, or his poetry is outdoor poetry. Dignity of importance of labor or dignity of common man is the central point of his poetry. Lot of common man, ordinary man has been discussed here. Man more important than nature. Definitely the poetry of man in suffering, people of oppressed class, humble rustic class, or we can say in other words less privileged people. His poetry is an encyclopedia of human thoughts. He seems to write on the whole of human race. So he is not only a poet of man, but a poet of humanity also. Depression or social satisfaction or situations or basic events occurring in the life of people are generally discussed there. There is a variety of people or characters in his poetry. The term here is God's plenty, which is applied to Prologue to Canterbury Tales of Chaucer, holds water here also. His characters are ordinary people. They are neither saints nor villain. They are very simple people and satisfied with their lot. Now the next point we are going to discuss, which is his as a nature poet or his attitude towards nature. You must know that no working farmer can be romantic about nature, no philosophy of his nature, no spirit, no divinity in nature. He is bold and free thinker and doesn't or can't set his eyes towards the evil aspect or bad aspect of nature. For Wordsworth, nature is always benevolent and beneficial, but like Keats, for Frost, nature is benevolent as well as malevolent. It means profitable as well as harmful. Being a Yankee farmer, a great poet, he can never be deceived by outward appearance. So he is always eager to depict and discover and depict truth or reality. He favors facts to fiction. Moral truth of his poetry is to move from delight to wisdom. Balance between wisdom and whimsy, or we can say in simple words, work and play. But there is nowhere vulgarity in his poetry. Now the next issue is as an American poet. His famous poem, The Gift Outright, containing 101 pages, definitely defines the definition of democracy as government of people, by the people, or for the people. lofty ideals, ideas, liberty, equality, fraternity are cardinal conditions of true democracy. The poem is called A Voice of America and a complete picture of true patriotism. However, universality comes out of this regionalism. Now we are going to discuss something or some situations or theme or central point of some of his very famous poems which are in your syllabus. For example, Mending Wall, first poem. How to maintain good relationship between two neighbors. This is the central idea of the poem. Second poem, The Road Not Taken. The problem of choice making and importance of choice making in life. Third one is the two tramps in mud time. Here, need to adopt a kind attitude towards tramps who are generally treated very harshly. And fourth, mowing. In mowing, there is dignity of labor, the importance of labor, with a very famous sentence, the last sentence, the fact is the sweetest dream that labor knows. This is the last sentence. And now, virtues. Through virtues, there is a beautiful balance of fact and fiction. There is a beautiful blending of earth and sky. The famous last line of the poet, earth is the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to go better. In Hindi, I can say in a single sentence, कितना भी चिड़िया उड़े आकाश, दाना है धरती के पास. The next poem is Stopping by Boots on a Snowy Evening. Here, the fulfillment of obligations or different duties of life is given importance. The last concluding 4 lines are very famous of this poem. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Now in the last we come to discuss about his poetic style. Like P.B. Shelley, he may be called as a perfect singing god because his style is clear, simple, epigrammatic, terse, symbolic and lyrical. He refined the vernacular. He speaks to man, about the man, in the language of man. He never poses to be a poet. He achieved what even Wordsworth couldn't achieve. He aimed, but couldn't achieve simplicity of language, because in some poems of Wordsworth, for instance, in Ode to Intimations and Ode to Duty, the language is very difficult. But in the language of Robert Frost's poem is very simple. Now, nobody is without limitations. So there are 3 limitations of his poetry as a poet. 1, range is narrow. Number 2, all poems are not of equal quality. 3rd, he kept aloof from social, political, economic issues of his life. However, his achievements far surpassed his limitations, and he has been acclaimed as the national American poet of 20th century. Thank you very much. We have some